Hello and welcome to Edinburgh Business Stories. EBS is hosted by myself, Alex Richards of Umore, a video production studio based in Edinburgh and Bristol, and Alan Smith of Action Coach, providing business coaching throughout Edinburgh and the Lothians. If you aren't already, remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. Kenny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, give us a wee snapshot of who you are and what your business does.
I'm Kenny McGee, CEO, founder of Component Sense. It's a business that helps billion-dollar manufacturers move excess or slow-moving stock. So it started 2001. So back then I worked for a company called Arrow Electronics, it's a 40 billion turnover company at peak. They've slipped back a little at the moment, but so a huge electronics distribution company. So we were selling chips to, in my case, Scottish companies, so the biggest electronics companies in Scotland. So your Honeywells and Celex, which is now Leonardo, companies like that. So anyone that's putting chips on boards was our customer base. And when I was working for them, I was walking through factories, visiting people, ultimately trying to sell components. So it was very much a sort of technical sales role. And when I was working through this particular factory in 2001, which was post a boom, so we had a massive sort of crazy electronics boom in 99, 2000, and then a crash in 2001. And it was just after that crash, I was walking through a factory in Perth, a telecoms company that's fortunately no longer with us. So a big supplier to BT, and I saw piles and piles of stock that I could tell had been discarded. It was just not quite as neatly packed as the stuff they were using. Electronic components come in these silver foil packs, and if they're in silver foil packs, there's money in them. They're special because they're protected from the environment from air and moisture. So at a glance, these are like gold bars to me. I know there's money in that pile. So I was just asking questions about, what's all that stuff? And it's just excess. And they weren't bothered and they kept walking. And I'm kind of doing that double take, what's all that? So I got into the office with the CEO, and I started to talk to him about that because I was just curious as to why it was mounting up and piling up. And he explained it was just a natural part of the process. And I'd never really considered that, when you're making electronic products, that, you're guessing. You're largely guessing what you need. You've got to order these things a year in advance, typically. There's long lead times on them. So you're guessing your forecast. I was a sales guy. I guessed a lot when I was asked for forecasts. So you've got all these guesses on top of guesses. Yeah. And then you buy components to that forecast, and the reality is you maybe don't sell as much as you thought you would. You're left with excess. If you change the product for whatever reason, you're left with excess. So it's a natural phenomenon, and it equates to about 10% of revenue. So if you're $1 billion business, that's a lot of stock. Yeah. And nobody's very good at moving it. So it tends to sit and sit and sit. It frustrates people. It's on the agenda. People talk about it. The CFO might be screaming about all that money that's tied up in that pile. But there's nobody really doing a great job. And certainly at that time, I certainly didn't know anyone doing it.
So what was happening at that point then with that excess stock?
It was literally just lying in the corner getting dusty, and eventually it would get dumped.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to landfill.
It probably shouldn't have been, but yeah, it probably was at that time. I mean, it's not supposed to be landfilled. You're supposed to obviously get a SEPA certificate and get it taken away, but we know that's not always as robust a process as it should be. But at that time I wasn't so focused on that. I was just thinking, what a waste. That stuff is brand new, still in its original packaging, straight from the distributor. Surely somebody else could use that. So that's what I started to investigate. I got a list from that guy of all the excess stock he had. I took it to my boss. I'd done some research, and I could tell we could easily redistribute it. We pretty much sold all the components in the UK. So we could easily see from our own databases that, that guy uses it, that guy uses it, that guy uses it. So it was at most a phone call to find somebody that would take it to me. And my CEO wasn't interested at all. He said, we sell, we don't buy. It's like, well, it's brand new. We've literally just delivered it. So sometimes you're literally delivering stock that's already excess before you've even delivered it, because the forecast changed 6 months ago, but you've ordered it, and when you order it now, they call it NCNR, so non-cancelable, non-returnable. So if you've committed to it, you're taking it. So again, if you ordered a year ago and the product's dead 6 months later, you're getting those components whether you like it or not. And there's no easy outlet for that. That company could have easily done it. They buy brokers every so often, so the term that's recognised for what we do is being a broker. So we're kind of middleman, I suppose. Never really liked it because there's a lot of shades of grey within that group of companies, all the way from black market, illegal behaviour, to what we would class ourselves as the whitest of white in terms of that. But there's lots of shades in between. So, we need to protect our customers and make sure we're buying good quality, traceable products. So
it seems crazy though that, as you say, it's such a big percentage of a business, and that no one was handling it. So you'd spotted a problem that needed solving.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's what they always say, isn't it? Is find a problem that needs solved.
Yeah.
I was very naive. I was pretty clueless looking back in terms of the electronics industry. I'd only been in that part of the industry for a few years. I started out as an apprentice in electronics with a company called Ferranti, which was one of the biggest employers in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I came out of the electronics industry for a while and then I came back into it in this sales role. So I was fairly new in that particular segment of the market. And I just thought, this looks like it needs solved. Yeah. So I decided I would get on and do it. And as I say, I was very naive. It took me 2 years to get my first sale. So even though I thought I knew how to do it, of course, I didn't have the database of clients that needed these parts. So I had to do it the hard way. So I was literally cold calling people in the similar industry to see if they could use these chips. And it was not very successful.
and when are you doing this, Kenny? Are you doing this almost kind of moonlighting with the current job that you're in, or have you left at this point?
No, I left. So after the really buoyant period of 99, 2000, the market crashed. That company was laying people off. So they were expecting 2001 to be a bumper year. So we'd had the biggest year of our lives in year 2000. 2001, 8th of January, they had a meeting, all hands meeting. So literally everybody had to fly down to head office in Bedford, and they brought people in from the States to tell us, the best analysts in the world, these guys on stage telling us that this was going to be another bumper year. So there's predicting 27% growth on top of the 100% growth we'd had the previous year. And by the end of January, they halved the workforce. So 3-4 weeks later, that's how far wrong they got it. They pretty much just drew a line through the business and just got rid of a stack of people. So at that time, they kept me on. They eventually offered me a different job, but I stayed in that job for a while. The different job wasn't my style at all. It was very much a kind of knocking on doors, cold calling type thing. I was a much more strategic salesperson. So this new role wasn't for me anyway. So I was going to be leaving in one form or another, and I had started to look around for jobs, and then this thing was still gnawing at the back of my head that these guys have a problem. I'm wildly customer focused, and I don't know what to say. I was really pissed off that I couldn't solve the problem for them because I felt it was easy to solve. So I decided I would go it alone with that list.
And how long did it take you then from spotting the opportunity to then actually doing something about it? What's the period of time?
I think I started to work on it as soon as I left.
Right.
But I didn't really I wasn't doing that moonlighting thing. I was focused on my job. And then once I decided this new job wasn't for me, because at that point I had the decision to make, take the new job or leave. Yeah. So I left. And then I got this list out, started digging through it. It was just a big Excel sheet, a big pile of part numbers. And as I say, it was infinitely harder than I thought. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't know there was such a thing as a broker network. there was. It took me, I think, to 2003 to find it. Internet wasn't very well evolved back then, so I think when Google came out, it's probably when I found it. Because I remember my brother telling me, "Oh, you've got to try this new thing called Google," and I'm like, "What the heck's that?" I was using, I don't know, Alta Vista and Hotbot and stuff like that, So there was some strange things to do on the internet in those days. But I eventually found a network existed, and you had to subscribe to it. And you could basically advertise your list of parts. Other people could see it and buy and ask for quotes on those parts. So that's when I started to actually make some inroads.
So back then, were you just drawing the dots? You weren't necessarily buying the parts and keeping them in your spare room. It was more like, hey, hold those, I'll see if I can find it. And then there would be a deal to be done. Yeah,
so the original name for the company was Component Exchange. And my intention was just to help people find a home. My revenue requirement at the time was £50 a day. That's what I needed to survive. That's what I was aiming for as a minimum revenue. And as I say, I failed to do that for 2 full years. So I'd built up a bit of credit card debt by then. That was just surviving. So I think I was 65 grand in credit card debt, which in those days was a lot of money.
And what was your status at this point? Are you a single bloke? You got family?
Was I single at that point? I think I was in a relationship. I was definitely in a relationship because my partner was not overly fond of my choice of career. So we kept everything equal. She was doing all right. She had a decent job, was making decent money. We paid everything halfway down the middle, and that's how I got into debt, because if we went on a holiday, I had to pay my half. Credit card, so mortgage, all that stuff was all half. So it wasn't really affecting her negatively, except that both her and my dad were like, for God's sake, just get a job, because obviously I could have got a job quite easily. But no, I thought this was the thing to do. I really believed it was the right thing to do, and I believed it had scale, it had potential. So I persevered, and that first order, 2 years down the line, almost exactly, came from China. Funnily enough, a company I just visited for the first time a few months ago, which was quite cool. Because actually, a colleague had set up the meeting. I hadn't even realised it was the same company. Oh, wow. But when I went in and saw the logo, I thought, holy crap, that's my first customer. Brilliant. Which was really cool. So, I got the order in. I wasn't VAT reg. So I actually lost money on that first order. I was so excited to get this first order, and then I ended up losing money on it because I was so naive. I didn't even understand that I was going to pay VAT upon receiving the goods. So I was doing that kind of buy it, sell it in one go kind of thing. And lost money on that deal. So the credit card went ka-ching. Oh, no. Up another little bit. That was painful. The funniest story about that was I got a fax number when I first started the business. I got BT to give me a fax number, but I was using email and the internet and thought nobody uses a fax nowadays, surely. So I didn't buy a fax machine. I had a fax number because it looked good on the website. It made me look like a professional company. So I was just running this from a little room in my house. And then this customer came on the phone saying, I'm trying to send you a fax. It's not going through. So I was like, oh, yeah, don't worry. I think there's a problem with it. I'll fix it. I'll get back to you. And I jumped in the car, went to Curry's and bought a fax machine, plugged it in. That's brilliant. It's a 250 quid fax machine, and I got my first order.
Did you? And lost money on it. So
It didn't really matter to me that I'd lost money on it, though, because I'd learned a lesson. Yes, obviously. I need to go VAT reg. Yeah. So I did that quickly. But it proved the concept finally, after 2 years of persevering with nothing, and no real evidence that the model could even work, that finally that was a trigger that I could sell it. But I'd found this broker network by that point. So I'd advertised this tiny list, really, in today's standards, and found a home for a part. So it started to work.
And when it started to work, then how quickly after that did you start to get the orders rolling in?
It was far from instant success. Mm-hmm. The forum I had found, so they call them forums, these places you advertise stock. They're quite niche. There's lots of them. So the one I found initially wasn't the best one. And in truth, it's actually the worst one of 12 we use now. Right. But I didn't know that. But it was generating enough income to pay the 50 quid a day. So, I had the bases covered. At least I was surviving now. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't transformative at all. I then went to Vegas in 2005. So I'd heard through that forum, actually, somebody had said, there's a thing that goes on in Vegas every year where we all get together, all the brokers get together. So it was sort of on the back of, there's a big electronics show, and it's just after that the brokers met up. There was a company called the ERAI, Electronic Resellers Association, that kind of held the whole thing together back then. US based, so it was largely US companies, but they were having this thing in Vegas, so I decided to go buy a kilt and get myself to Vegas. And I just wanted to make sure I stood out and that people knew who I was by the end of that sort of 5-day trip to Vegas. And I met loads of people. And of course I was asking them, where do you advertise? Where's your most popular place? So I'd learned some of the better places to advertise. So I came back, subscribed to 2 or 3 more forums, and then it started to take off a little bit bigger. So that was the key. But you're getting out and meeting people and just gaining their trust, because it's very much a business of trust. Because as I say, all shades from black to very, very nearly white. The American group were brilliant. They were really good, and they took me under their wing. Everybody wanted a photo of the idiot with the kilt, which was good.
That's you at conferences as well.
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
But it works, eh?
Yeah, it works.
So
It's unbelievable. We actually had a big conference in Munich recently, and we took, I think, 14 staff, and we were all in kilts.
Oh, great.
And it still works.
Yeah.
People wanted to talk to us. We had a big Jenga model of caramel wafers. So if you could get your caramel wafer out the Jenga, you got to keep it, and that was good fun. You know?
Yeah. So how quickly then were you starting to think like, okay, this really starts to happen, I need to start hiring people? What was that progression?
My first hire was, I think that was 2003. I think, in the pre-chat, I alluded to the fact that I've probably got ADHD. I've never been diagnosed, but everybody around me is nodding their head, But my youngest daughter was getting diagnosed recently, and I was beside her answering the questions for myself and thinking, I'm off the scale here, So I think without getting diagnosed, and I'm not going to waste money because I am who I am, and I've learned to live with it all this time, But yeah, it can be a bit all over the place, to the point that I've actually forgotten the question.
About your first hire.
First hire, yeah. So I got a decent amount of orders.
Point proven.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
So anyone could do this.
There's your diagnosis.
Oh dear. Yeah. So I had this little room. So I was like Harry Potter. I had a desk under the stair, right? So there was a tiny little bedroom with a little alcove under the stairs. So that's where my desk was. So I was sitting looking into this dark hole. It was miserable. I don't know why the hell I didn't move the desk, but that's where I built the desk. So I was working from there. I had a sort of room that became the kids' toy room. It was just a sort of spare room. I bought the house. It's quite a big house. Well, big by my standards and bigger than I needed. So there was a room that I couldn't afford to decorate. I was skint. I was absolutely broke. So this room was kind of just sitting doing nothing. So I started laying out orders. So if I got an order, I would lay it out, and then I would get the tracking details. I'd lay that on top. I'd get the invoice, print that off, lay that on top. So I kind of had these little packs of, this is all the stuff to do with this particular order. And, pretty disorganized. So this just started getting piled up in this extra room, this spare room. And to the point I used to have to go in my socks and just tiptoe through all these orders. So I had months worth of orders just spread out across the floor. Right. So the room was kind of useless now, but I'd run out of space. I had nowhere else to lay orders. And that's when I thought, I really need some help. I'm going to have to get somebody to at least file this stuff, because I was never going to file it. It's not my bag. Yeah. So I decided I couldn't really afford somebody, in truth. At the time it was still, can't really afford it, but I'm going to have to do it because there's no way I can grow this business without some help. So I went to a local agency in Livingston, and they found me somebody. And initially it went swimmingly. It was wonderful having some help, and she was great, super organised, and more than happy to cope with my inability to be remotely organised. So it was a great pairing. So we worked away together, and I wanted to grow this thing. I really wanted to grow this big. We'd got to, I think, about 500,000 turnover at that point.
Just with the two of you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we were doing okay, and I was doing okay. I'd finally got a slightly better car because I was driving the most embarrassing car when I started this business. I had to buy this piece of crap Rover off my dad. Yeah. And it was an embarrassing colour. It was horrible. I mean, I quite like cars, and this thing I hated getting in it. Yeah. But it was really good for driving my ambition, because I did not want to be seen in this damn thing. It was horrible in every way. So that was motivation for me. So that was all fine. But yeah, the chaos, she brought great order to the chaos. Everything was going swimmingly, but I wanted to bring in more people, so I wanted to turn that room that was filled with stuff into an office. So I had 4 desks in it, all set up. I had phone lines put in, and I was trying to expand the business. And for some reason, I had real trouble hiring. I just got somebody in, they wouldn't work out, back out the door, and going round and round in that loop over and over. And I was travelling a fair bit, so I was going off to win clients. So our clients are the bigger guys. They're not typically local. So, we sell everywhere. I think 67 countries around the world we sell to. But we want to buy from quality places that have good high standards and are buying from the right places too, to make sure our components are of the highest quality. So I tended to have to travel. So I'd be out, 2 weeks at a time typically. And I'd come back and getting told that, this new hire's not working out, there's problems, and have to get rid of them and go through the whole hiring loop again. And this it just kept happening, I couldn't really fathom what was going on. So I got to the point I really wanted to rock this thing forward. I had an accountant that was sort of fractional, so he was working with us maybe a day a week, or maybe even 2. And I decided I was going to take him on as a CFO. So even though we were just 2 people at the time, I wanted to grow the business. So, and this guy he was great. Largely self-taught. I don't think he was even fully qualified as an accountant, but he was a smart guy and he could do a bit of everything. So I decided I was going to take him on. He was going to be on a significant salary, more than I was earning. And this my assistant wasn't very keen on him coming in, and I initially thought it was just because he was going to be on a decent salary. He had some experience, and you got to pay what you got to pay for the right talent. So I'd offered him the job, and she said that if I took him on, she would leave, and she was really important to me, in terms of holding the business together, because as we've discussed, I wasn't particularly well organised and wasn't holding it together awfully well. But when she said that, I just thought, I can't not grow this, and I couldn't grow it just me and her. And I think the reality is that she was doing all right. She, again, came in on a pretty basic sort of admin salary, and within a couple of years, I doubled that, and she had a company car, and she was well looked after. Took her and her husband to Vegas and stuff as well the following year. Treated her right for sure, and she was an important part of the business. But I decided that I had to move forward. If she was really that adamant, I had to take that risk. So I carried on and took this guy on. And then the following day, she gave me a resignation letter, which I accepted. And that was a nightmare in lots of ways, because she was holding all the pieces together. I had pretty much had to half the business in order to do it, because there was lots of stuff she was doing that there was no way I was going to be able to do without her. So there was 2 sides to the business back then. We bought stock and we sold stock. That's kind of what we still do. But there was also a thing called sourcing, where you go looking for parts for people. So, you guys, you've had short scope on here. They buy components to make their products. If they couldn't get one from their normal source, they would go to a broker that would source it. So that was half of our business. Very time consuming, and I don't enjoy that either. So there was no way I was going to be taking that on. So I basically had to shut that side of the business. So we turnover down. So that was painful. So we went back into a loss-making situation for a while.
Right, okay.
But I decided I was going to expand the business properly, borrowed some money from the bank, and we were going to grow this damn thing. Moved into bigger premises, 7,500 square feet, good bit of office space, and I was going to grow this thing properly. So that's what we started to do. I remortgaged the house, put another pile of money into it. So it was a fairly significant investment at the time. That would have been probably 2007-ish. Yeah, I think 2007, took on all that debt. And that was us now on our way, though. We're going to really burst through and do this properly. So that accountant stayed with me. And then we started to bring in some other people. And it was going okay. We got it moving, got it heading in the right direction. And then there was a funny thing called lots of different names, but the financial crisis came around. So we started to hear about it in 2008, particularly in the States. And it was really 2009 by the time that it hit us. Yeah. But we'd started to fill this warehouse. So, it was a much, much bigger warehouse. And the business was fine. We were trading okay. I mean, it wasn't amazing. We weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we were doing okay. And one day I got a call from the bank, and they said, that overdraft and that loan you've got, so it was like 250 grand loan, 80 grand overdraft I think we were using at that time, which was working capital. Most of the loan had been spent on the move, on kitting the place out, and people, because we'd brought in quite a decent amount of people at that point. And then, the guy, my relationship manager, my friend at the bank, called and said, we want that back. And I initially kind of just laughed, being honest, because I thought, well, try and get blood out of stone. I didn't think they could really get it back in a hurry. So I said, how long have we got? And he said, no, we need it back immediately. I'm like, well, I can't just magic up 300 odd grand. So, realistically, what are you talking about? Oh, no, we need it back immediately. I came off the phone. I told some of the guys in the office what just happened. And they were kind of in disbelief. I said, well, what can I do? I found out the next morning. I looked at my bank statement and some money had just arrived from a customer. And we were kind of buying and selling. So, we were small enough at the time that $1 billion business wasn't going to trust us with cash. So we had to pay up front. So if I wanted to buy it from a $1 billion business, I paid cash on Monday. I sold it on Tuesday. So it was like that. We would typically get paid within 7 days of selling it. We've got quite tight terms, and our industry accepts that. So I'd maybe get my money 7 to 10 days later. So I just had to span it for that period, and we'd get our margin. So it was all quite cool. But suddenly money appeared in, and then it disappeared. So very briefly you would see it show up, and then the next transaction was just the removal of that cash. So every time cash came in, it just vanished. And within a couple of days of watching that happening, it was pretty apparent we weren't going to be able to even pay the wages at the end of the month. So it was really brutal. It was shocking what they did, and then the banks did it too. So many perfectly safe companies. We weren't in trouble by any means, but they really pulled the rug from under our feet, and I was pretty screwed.
What was your emotional state like at this point when you're seeing that happen?
We talked about personalities earlier. I'm quite a fiery character. Yeah, I was probably pretty angry. I didn't overreact to it, I don't think. I mean, initially, like I say, I was kind of blasé about it, thinking, what can happen? But yeah, when I saw what was happening, I think I was a wee bit frozen, being honest. I didn't really know what to do initially. Strangely, I had a friend sleeping on my living room floor, what used to be that office covered in paperwork, because he'd just gone through something similar. So he'd had a similar experience. He had a business down in Liverpool. He lost everything. And he was camping on a blow-up mattress in my spare room. So he was really instrumental in keeping me sane through that period, because he'd been through it. He'd lost everything. But he also saw the process firsthand, so he knew what was coming. And I was oblivious to that, what the next step of the bank was going to be. He was telling me, look, they're going to come in, they're going to take everything, they'll take all the equipment, the computers, the stock, and they're going to basically shut you down. And I was naive enough to think that no, they wouldn't do that. I genuinely was thinking that they wouldn't do that. And he said, no, they will. And you've seen they've done it to me. So he kind of took over in some ways and said, look, this is what you need to do. He found a buyer for the business. He found somebody that would buy the business, because at this point, I was just trying to safeguard an income, and trying to keep a house over our heads. We had a young child. My wife and I had a young child, and you kind of go into survival mode a little bit. So he was saying, basically, we need to sell the company, and hopefully, at least you'll have a job in that company. So he found a buyer. He got it all independently valued. And this guy bought it all within the space of a week or two. And funnily enough, my lovely relationship manager called again, because he wanted to come for a visit. And it was all lovely on the phone. Oh, I just want to come see how you're doing. And okay, fine. So we booked a meeting. And he came into the boardroom with this other guy with him, who funnily enough I knew as well, because he was a relationship manager previously at HSBC. But he was now in a new job with RBS. And he was the hatchet man, so he was in to value all of the stuff. So brought them into the boardroom, brought them a coffee, and they were saying, right, so we need to talk to you about the business, and we're here to basically inventory everything. And I thought, well, I better introduce you to the owner then. And I went and got the new owner, brought him into the room, and they just stood up and walked out. It was interesting, wasn't it? And there was no niceties anymore. They were just off. So the fact that we'd effectively sold all the assets meant that they had nothing to go after. There wasn't a huge amount to go after anyway, being honest. But they were there literally to take assets. So my friend had been bang on. He knew the process. He knew what was coming. So I had a job at least. It didn't really work out awfully well. So the guy renamed the company and effectively created a new company with those assets. I was an employee for probably a couple of years.
Right.
But there was an element of risk in what we do. So we buy often a piece of stock. I mean, even in a single transaction, you buy a pile of stock. It might be 10 grand. You bring it in. If you inspect it and it's not quite right, the client doesn't really want to take it back. These billion-dollar businesses aren't designed for moving small pieces of stock. So they typically don't want it back. And if your customer doesn't want it, you can sometimes get stuck with it. So there is risk involved, and sometimes you just have to suck that up. On a bigger scale, sometimes somebody wants to sell you a whole batch of stock. So you might buy 1,000 items in a batch, and it might be infinitely more money, 100 grand, 200 grand. You buy that stock in the hope that you can sell it. It's an educated guess, and we've got a lot of knowledge now, a lot of data, and we've got great systems that now tell us the likelihood of selling that part. But back then it was just a gut feel. It was my gut feel. So with this other guy's money, he was a wee bit uncomfortable with me going, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Let's spend 100 grand on that. He just wasn't comfortable with that. So he was not allowing me to buy the very stock I would make money on. Yeah. So it wasn't really going anywhere, and he got a bit uncomfortable and decided he wanted out. So he agreed to allow me to effectively earn myself back into the business. So we agreed an amount of money, and then I just had to make money and pay him out. Yeah. And so I bought him back out after a couple of years. So I think it was 2009 that I got control of the business back late on. That's okay. Sure, they can cut that out or do something special with it. Yeah, no worries. So, I got back in control of the business and started to grow it. However, there was a challenge of the clients we had at that time. So when we took on the warehouse, we took on lots of stock, some of it not ours. So that was the other complicated thing when the bank showed up, is a lot of the stock in the warehouse wasn't ours. We had it on what we call consignment. So that's stock where we physically pick it up, bring it in, we manage it, but it still belongs to the client.
Yeah.
So a fair bit of the stock was of that form at the time. That was a way we could grow without raising capital, because obviously I didn't like banks anymore. No. So we'd filled this place with other people's stock. And when the first business had gone bust, of course, there was no obligation for the new entity with the new owner to pay back those debts. But I felt a real moral obligation to make sure those people were, squared up. So that was challenging, because when I did make money, I felt obliged to effectively clear down those debts in some way, because I was still selling their stock. None of them moved out or took their stock away. So I tried to make it up. So I would give them more for this new piece of stock I sold to effectively pay off that old debt, which, again, legally not obliged to do, but I just felt it was the right thing to do. So that held us back a bit, and I didn't realise how much. So it was about 10 years almost of that, 2018 when we finally cleared all of that. And then we started to grow. So we were kind of stuck at that $500,000 point, because effectively any profit was going to these clients that we worked with. But once we had some money, then suddenly we could invest in more stock and more people and more systems, more tech. So looking back now, that maybe wasn't the right way to do it. We should probably just got on, made some money, and I could just always square them up later down the line, because it was stifling us. That lack of cash flow. Cash flow's king, isn't it? So, looking back, that maybe should have done that differently, I think. But I just felt I had to.
Morally, you were wanting to just clear it.
Yeah. So that takes you to like 2018.
Yeah.
You're then finally free.
Free of that, and then we started to grow. So our turnover went from $500,000 to $1 million to 2.2 or 2.5, I think, then 5.2, 12.7.
And COVID had quite a positive impact on component.
Not initially.
Not initially.
Right. So initially, funnily enough, that was actually, I don't know if I even put that in the notes for you guys, but COVID was eventually a good thing for us. But initially it was horrendous, because we saw it before anyone else saw it in the UK. A lot of our customers were Chinese. Manufacturing happens in China. So electronic manufacturing is largely happening in China still, albeit there's things changing as we speak. But at that time, a big chunk of our sales was China. And we saw our sales in September of 2019 plummet, 22% of normal in September of 2019. That continued into October, November, December, way below break even. We were like, holy crap, what's going on here? And we had no explanation for it. By the tail end of the year, we were starting to hear about this virus in China, but it was played down massively. And one of my close colleagues, Grant, CTO, I make statements sometimes, and it's based on a lot of things that I've maybe read and some gut feel and things like that. And he'll accuse me, the Steve Jobs reality distortion field they used to talk about with Steve Jobs. Have you heard of that?
I've heard. Go on, remind me.
Well, the team kind of felt he just came out with stuff, and as fact that maybe in their eyes didn't have an awful lot of substance to it. So I think gut is based on a lot of different things. I think if you've got a strong gut feeling, I do believe and trust my gut. It's not just something you've plucked out of thin air. You're absorbing so much information as an entrepreneur, as a business person, that it's an accumulation of all of that, isn't it? So anyway, my gut feel was this virus thing, this had to be the explanation for it. So I was starting to talk about that maybe November, December, that, maybe it's this thing, But we were seeing sales plummeted in Europe and in US and in China. Now, we definitely hadn't shut down. We knew that, and neither had Europe, neither had the US. And the Chinese, as I say, were playing it down massively. And I think even to this day, they claim it didn't hit them till November. but what other explanation was there for this, you know? So I went into Christmas, had the worst Christmas holidays of my life because we were in trouble. You know, we were very quickly going to be in trouble. And I spent that time really looking at costs. How can we reduce costs? Again, I never like to lose people because it takes us years to get people up to speed. It's probably 2 years before somebody's really performing for us. By the time they really understand what we do and what the industry is. We're trying to improve that, but it just takes time. It's not a common industry. We can't pluck people from the industry. We always have to train them up. So I really didn't want to lose people, but I cut every other cost we could. So we took wage cuts. The senior people took wage cuts. We cut all sort of outside support. So, you know, we had fractional people at the time that were sort of hired daily. So we let those guys go. I can't remember what else we did, but I pretty much cut everything to the bone. We're still in negative territory, but not so bad. I was part of the Vistage group. I think you know Vistage. We met with those guys, and that was really useful at the time because, you know, I'm telling them what's going on and they're all oblivious and everything's rocking on for them still. And then we had some sort of special emergency meetings with them by the time we were coming towards March. And they were now panicking and trying to work out how they were going to survive this lockdown that was imminently approaching. And at that point, our sales started to flow again. So Chinese went off for Chinese New Year. I think it was late February that year. And when they came back from Chinese New Year, our sales started to move in China at least. So China was about a third of our business back then. And now we're selling again. So it was pretty bizarre and suggested that maybe this COVID thing was real, you know, and it was the cause of our downturn. America was now starting to go into shutdown, so was Europe. So that bit didn't recover for a while, but at least we had some business flowing. We were able to stay open. Obviously, we do electronic components. We sent everybody home from the office, so we pared the warehouse down to one guy that would go in at a time and manage the warehouse. So we managed to keep the warehouse rolling with one person. It was hard. Poor guy.
Is he still with us?
He's still with us, yeah. Yeah. Wow. He had to work some pretty long hours just to keep things flowing. But you know, sales were still down, but at least they were kind of coming back. Yeah. But what it made me realise, and again, you know, with all the data in the world, we've got loads of data. We analyse our business to death. Even our European and American customers were clearly ultimately feeding China. You know, for our sales to plummet as far as they did, and as early as they did, you know, even our European and US sales must have been ultimately ending up in China because it dried up so suddenly. So that was fascinating. And of course, now got a president in the US that's trying to reverse some of that, but that's creating new challenges for us.
I bet.
Tell us about FLI 2000S.
So the FLI 2000S, that's a component. I'd never heard of the brand. The brand was Ferrugia. It was a video chip. And this was back when the business was still pretty tiny and I was still in my little Harry Potter box, you know, so I'm still sitting under the stair working away. I should know the date that this happened, but I don't, unfortunately. I'm not great on detail, but I got a call out of the blue from an American guy and he basically said, I've got some chips for sale. So it was weird, right? Because the internet was relatively fresh when I first started. I created a website pretty much from day one. It cost me £400. It was a massive investment, which it really was at the time because I had no money. It was fairly basic, but it was infinitely better than my competition because in those days, web pages were pretty much just name, address, and maybe a logo if you're lucky. I looked at all the websites that were performing well for the sort of keywords that I wanted, excess stock, electronic components and all this sort of stuff. And I looked at the source code to them and I kind of cobbled together a sort of mix of them all. So I didn't know what I was doing really, but I just said to this guy, look, this code needs to make sure all these keywords are in it. And suddenly we started ranking. So out of the blue, I got a call from a guy in America who was turned out to be a liquidator. I didn't know this at the time. He just said, I've got this chip I need to sell. There's 22,000 of them. I was skint. At this point, I'm 65 grand in debt. My credit card or credit cards, plural. There was a whole fan of them. So he was offering me, these were $40 each, right? So I'm on Google trying to work out what this chip is, whether could I sell it, is it worth buying? I couldn't really fathom. It wasn't a brand I knew. I couldn't fathom whether this was a good buy or not. So I said, let me look into it. So I basically bought myself some time. I advertised it on these forums that I was advertising it on, and I got a hit pretty much immediately. Now that's pretty rare, right? So right. The question to me, in the form I filled out for you guys was luckiest break, right? So this was luck, because that doesn't always happen, right? But I got a hit, and somebody wanted 100 pieces of this thing. 100 pieces at $40 was a lot of money to me at the time.
Yeah. That
was a great sale. Yeah. Probably my best sale ever. So I'm like, I want these 100 pieces. So I got on the phone to the guy the next day and said, yeah, I'll take 100. And he's like, no, I'm selling them all or none. I'd rather bin them than sell 100. I'm not getting into that. That's when I learned he was a liquidator. So his job was just to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. So when he said he was a liquidator, I thought, probably not so bothered what he gets for them. I'll see if I can work something out. So I was kind of negotiating with him and trying to still get the 100. I was still focused on, I need to get the 100 because there's some margin in there for me that'll keep me rolling for another week or two, So I'd worked out what I could charge my client, which I think was $3,200. So I thought, if I buy them for $3,200, I'll just wash my face, but at least I've got this relationship going with this guy now. He'll sell me more. So I'm still locked in the 100-piece thing. Mm-hmm. So I called him up and said, look, I can get you 3,200. And he said, okay. And a big pause, and I'm just thinking, what's this? Is this for the 100? or the 22,000? And I was just puzzling a little, and I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure, and he didn't say. And I said, so you want a PO for 100, or do you want a PO for the whole lot? And he said, no, the whole lot. Yeah, send me a PO for the whole lot. I'm like, holy shit! I was just like, I need to put the phone down because I'm going to scream. It's like, brilliant. I wasn't making any money still because I was only selling 100, but I then had a pile of stock that was potentially worth money. So, I mean, at that moment, it wasn't a massive celebration, but at least I'd secured 100 pieces and had some stock. So, bought it on my credit card, and the stock came in. I sold 100 pieces. That was great. And then that guy came back, bought another 100, and it moved a little bit here and there, but it was well in profit as a batch. So I was quite happy. But over the next year or so, I sold the whole bloody lot. And that was very fortunate, and I put a lot of cash flow into the business. So that was a massive turning point, because that's what allowed this sort of expansion and stuff. So that was before we moved into the bigger office and took the loan, and it gave me the confidence probably to take a loan too. And suddenly the bank loved me. They were trying to get me to buy a new house, and this was all just before the financial crisis. They literally, I was sitting in a house, maybe, I don't know, I paid 200 grand for it. It's probably worth 300 at that time. They were showing me brochures. My bank manager was showing me, this lovely person that was always there for me. He was showing me brochures of like £1.2 million houses, saying, why don't we get you a mortgage for this? Because that's how mad the banks were at that time. They were just so desperately selling debt. And of course, if I'd taken that, I didn't need a bloody mansion. This thing was like a castle. It was stunning, but I didn't need it. But yeah, they were quite prepared on the basis of one sale. That's how mad it was. I knew it was based on one part, and once they were gone, they're gone. Mm-hmm. So I knew that this surge in revenue was almost a flash in the pan, yet they were willing to lend me pretty much anything I wanted to buy some crazy house. That's how irresponsible they were.
Yeah. Please tell me you've got a nice little framed copy of this part somewhere in your house or your office.
I always intended to keep at least one and get it put into a piece of, that Perspex or something. That was my intention. And by pure accident, we sold them all. And I didn't keep one. I tried to buy one, but for me, to be authentic, it had to be the same date code. It had to be produced in the exact same week. So I never managed to find one with the exact same date code, because I would have liked to have kept one.
What kind of machine would it have gone into? Because we can try and find a machine for you and then strip it apart.
Yeah, we could do that. It would have been high-end camera equipment at the time.
All right.
Yeah, it would have been high-end camera equipment.
Maybe got some.
Yeah, you might.
Let's put a shout out over the podcast.
Let's open up some of these cameras. Let's see what's inside.
And so you've built this incredible business. You're growing. You're doing some cool stuff. But for you, there's a lot more to it than just building a great business, making some money. There's a purpose behind all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I went through a period of, buying nice cars and things like that. I said that the motivation of that hideous Rover I had was important to me. So, I wanted a nice car, achieved that. That drove me for a long time. I actually had a photo of myself, still got it on the chalkboard at home. That photo in 2000, I had some hair back then. And it was just some stranger's car I saw outside a showroom. I took a picture of myself beside it and kept that. And as I say, I've still got that. So that drove me for a period and gave me a lot of motivation. To get that car. I got that car in 2005. So that was a big step, and it had that chip number engraved on the side plate as you step in. They customise those cars for you, so it was a nice car with that plate and that part number on it. So that was a key moment. Probably not the brightest thing, spending piles of money on a car, but you only live once.
Part of the journey,
So that was the car, but and again, I've forgotten the full question.
Just talking about your mission now.
Mission now, right? Okay, so that really stalled me. So once I got the car, what's next? And I tried like hell to find something that really drove me and motivated me and got me focused, because focus isn't great for me. And a bigger, fancier, better car didn't work. I was even looking at little airplanes and 4-seaters with parachutes, and I thought I could zip over to Hungary in my own plane. So I literally looked at stuff like that, and I still didn't spark the motivation I needed. So it was a bit of a struggle for a while from a personal motivation point of view, because I didn't have something to go after. Because once you've got a nice car, I mean, it's a nice car after a while, It's not really, and one nice car or another nice car, they're kind of largely the same, aren't they? Let's be honest. Different colours and slightly different shapes. But I was really struggling for a good few years in terms of my own personal motivation. And then I saw a documentary, I think that was also around about 2007, that really hit me hard. And it was about e-waste in particular. So like our TVs, the stuff we take to the tip, or amenity site, they call it nowadays. We used to call it a tip. This documentary basically highlighted a TV with a tracker in it going into my local tip. So I live just outside Edinburgh on the west side, and my local tip received a TV that was then tracked and found in Ghana. And I did some research thereafter, and I've always kind of kept in touch with what was going on over there. And we do talk about it. It's in my slide deck when I'm talking to customers about, do you know what happens to our e-waste? So it's always been in there, or it's been in there for a very long time. Some more interested than others. A lot of the big manufacturers are still very financially focused. Environment's still secondary for some of them, but more and more now, younger managers coming in and rising to the top. We're seeing some companies are really focused on the environment, which is good. But this stuff was ending up in Ghana, and it was a horrible mess. And there's loads of documentaries about it. If you just look up e-waste Ghana, you'll find them. And it just hit me really hard that my waste could literally end up dumped in a place where people that are wildly impoverished. I mean, even now they're earning about £2.50 a day, burning the hell out of our electronics in order to get to some value. They're just looking for copper predominantly. There's a little bit of gold in components, but it's very hard to get out. The way they get it out, they're not getting much gold, but they can get copper quite easily by burning the hell out of it.
Can I ask a silly question? Why did it hit you?
I just thought it was shocking. It was just really, really shocking to think that something I thought was getting recycled You know, you're taking it to a place that says recycling. You know, I imagined it was being carefully dismantled to get those raw materials out, and it wasn't. So yeah, I was just appalled. Okay. I was really particularly shocked because it was so local, and it, you know, it could literally be mine. I do say I'm not a sandal wearing, tree hugging hippie. You know, I'm not like that. But my mum was really into the environment. My mum bought a house when I was a bit older. I was moving out, or in the process of moving out, when she bought this place with a bit of a field, and she had a couple of horses. My little sister was into horses, and the first thing my mum wanted to do was plant trees on this field, because, you know, she'd heard that it was good for the environment. So she had us all. I mean, again, we were townies. You know, I was from Corstorphine. We're now suddenly living out in the countryside on the west side of Edinburgh, and you know, proper townies. You know, we'd never done hard work in our lives. Suddenly we're planting 1,000 trees for my mum in this field by hand, and putting fences up and all this sort of stuff. You know, we didn't have a clue. Local farmers thought it was hilarious. So mum was really always into the environment and animals particularly. So I think that influenced me a lot. And yeah, I mean, burning electronics. You know, I mean, I've worked in electronics since I was 16, and you know, I know there's valuable materials in there, but I mean, this stuff doesn't burn easily. It's not designed to burn. You don't want electronics going up on fire. So, you know, there's flame retardants, there's all kinds of things in there to not burn. So for them to burn it, they're actually throwing even more plastics onto it to get it hotter. So when I was out there, and you know, I went out a couple of years ago to see the supply chain, to see what was actually happening. So that's really what it took me to. But I mean, it's driven me for a long time, and then I decided I wanted to really see firsthand what's happening out there. So I followed the supply chain from containers arriving with our e-waste, and it's not just us; it's all of Europe. It's a lot of stuff. The American stuff seems to go to China, but globally we're all dumping our e-waste somewhere. Recently found out there's a lot goes on in Delhi. So in India, I'm not entirely sure whose waste they're getting, but I'll definitely go out and investigate that too. But I want to understand, you know, just why is it happening? You know, 2000 onwards, we're not allowed to sell e-waste. We're not allowed to move it out of country. It should be recycled here. So why is it still happening? So my initial thought was, we need to stop it. And I thought that would be a government thing, you know, a UK government thing and a European government thing. But once I got out there and realised just the scale of it, you know, there's 140,000 people living in this slum that are all fed from our e-waste. So you start to see the human stories. You know, there's real people that they're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to feed their families. So seeing that human side, and throughout the supply chain. So, you know, there's guys that repair them and sell them. And the things that can't be repaired end up in this particular area. So, I mean, there's 140,000 on that site where they're dismantling, burning. God knows how many people are in the resale market and all the rest. It's huge. So, you know, it's a lot of people that are reliant on it. So if you just stop the flow, we're now abiding by the laws we set in 2000, but you're going to kill these people. You're going to take their livelihoods from them. So I think it needs a much more subtle approach. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go out and meet the people, you know. And they were lovely. You know, the people that we met out there, all of them were brilliant. They were really open. They told us exactly what was going on. And they were a bit wary of us shutting down the supply chain. Some thought, because I was European, that I could maybe supply them stuff, you know, so they immediately, oh, can you get me stuff? Can you get me TVs? And that's not what we're here for. That's not what we do. But I'm certainly sensitive to those human lives and those families. I mean, one of the guys
trying their best, aren't they?
Yeah. And what would we do in the same situation? You know, if you couldn't feed your family. So one of the chiefs I spent a lot of time with, he was brilliant and showed us around, and so it's kind of tribal still. So this chief thing is still a thing, but there's also government, and so there's lots of different influences on it. It's not a simple problem to solve, because you've got to keep everybody happy somehow. So we've got this guy Mohammed and his family. He's down there burning, He's kind of in charge of the burning area, but he's got family up north. So most of the people in this area, they're Muslim and they're from the north of the country, and they've basically migrated down to earn money. So if you're migrating down to earn £2.50 a day, it suggests it's pretty tough up north. But what he says, if he doesn't earn money to send home, they can't fertilise the farm. So they've got a little farm. And again, he's sent me videos of him on his little tractor up in the farm, and it looks a bit like us planting trees, So he's got this little farm, but it's not viable without the fertiliser. So, he has to send money home to buy the fertiliser to make enough food to feed themselves and some of the local communities. So it's really hand to mouth. It's really basic. So solving the problem is infinitely harder than I thought. I thought I might be able to put some money into it and, maybe create some sort of school where we could be teaching people how to recycle properly, maybe even create a business that could do it. But it's more complex than that, and it's going to cost a lot more than I thought. I thought maybe 100 grand would get it kicked off, but it's going to be much bigger. Right. So my hope is that as our very large clients become more concerned about the environment, and some, as I say, some are, that they might help us, particularly on the financial side. I've got a phone there that costs £1,400. If it cost me an extra tenner, would I care?
Yeah.
That £10 could go a long way over there. So if I could influence people like Apple, Samsung to join us on this journey, I think we could make a real difference. Not just in Ghana.
Are they listening? Are they caring?
I haven't got in front of the right people yet in the particularly big companies, but no, I mean people care, and I'm, as I say, in the sort of middle management layer, I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm for it. There's one or two companies that are really prominent in terms of their environmental care. Schneider Electric is the one that's winning the most awards. But from a component point of view, they could do more, and they know that. It's on their list, but it's down the list. Right. So it's priorities, isn't it, in business? So we've just got to be there. We've got to take them with us and guide them. We can't make them do it. And I think legislation is proven over and over that governments getting involved doesn't actually solve the problem. People find a way around it. This stuff wouldn't be there if that was the case. So the rules and the laws don't really work. But I think as consumers, if we choose to buy a particular brand because we know they're doing good things, then that will ultimately make the companies want to do more. So I think it'll come. When I first started talking about this stuff, I could see people glaze over. I'm talking to a CFO or a general manager of a big factory. They were just like, they didn't really care.
But it's interesting if you kind of go back to the start of the conversation. The theme I'm seeing is that you're bothered about waste. So, when you were bothered about the excess, it's like what's happening with that. No one seemed to know or care. And now it's like you're bothered about excess and waste, but at a different level almost. So that's kind of how I'm hearing it. There's consistency of, and how do you solve the problem?
My mum and dad were young during the war, so like very young. So they remember the war, they remember the post-war rationing, and they were fanatical when we were growing up about you finishing everything on the plate. And money was really tight when we were young. My mum was as skinny as hell because she couldn't afford to feed herself and 5 kids. There's 5 of us. So there's pictures of her, when she was young with probably 3 or 4 boys at the time. I think 4 boys in a row. I don't know how she coped. She was like a stick. And she later told me that she literally couldn't afford to feed herself and us. So she was, really scrimping. And my dad's still like that. We go to America, we take my dad to America, he's 87 now. And, the portions in America are mental, aren't they? So you get this massive plate. He will sit there for hours, and you can see he's in pain, but he will finish his plate. And I keep saying to him, in America, Dad, we'll just take half of it home, you can have it tomorrow. And he'll go, oh no, he'll just, he's straining. He's a nightmare. Now even when I buy him a whole pizza, I give him 3/4 of it. I never give him the whole one. I cut it up and I spread it out on the plate because he will force it down, and you can see, he just has to eat everything on the plate,
Kenny, we ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
guiding principle. I think openness, honesty is number one for me. I mean, we're completely transparent with our clients, with our partners. I'm very transparent with everybody in the business. You know, everybody knows our numbers. There's nothing hidden. And yeah, we're very much open book. And I just want to work at speed. And you know, there's a great book, The Speed of Trust. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah. It's Stephen Covey, not the original.
Yeah, it's a son.
Stephen Covey. Yeah, great book, really good book, and that's my thing. I give that book out to pretty much every client I meet because I want them to get it. That if we work together openly, honestly, industry's funny. You know, everybody's secretive. And, you know, we're all doing the same stuff, really. You know. I think I just like to be really open. There's another company that's in the same sort of field as us, slightly different products, and you know, we're working with them at the moment very openly because we think we can help them. You know, and we might not gain any monetary value out of it, but their philosophy is similar, trying to make a difference. So if we can help them do that with what we've learned, then why would we not? You know, I think if everything's down to pence and pounds or cents and dollars, then you don't necessarily make the right decisions. Certainly not for this planet that we live on.
Yeah. Kenny, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, and we wish you all the luck in the future.
Thank you.
Brilliant.